Hi guys and welcome to another video. So in today's video we'll cover functions in Python. So let's get started by our agenda for this video. So first of all we're gonna see a quick introduction to functions in Python. And then we're gonna go through a quick definition for what is a function. And then we're gonna go through parameters, keyword arguments, returns, and finally scope. So let's get started. So first of all, let's see a quick introduction to functions. So actually a function is a collection of several lines of code. By calling a function, we can call all of these lines of code at once, without having to repeat ourselves. So a function is a tool that you can use over and over again to produce consistent output from different inputs. So we have already learned about one function called print. We know that we call print by using this syntax here. Print and parentheses, inside them we put whatever we want to print. So here's a quick example of a function that adds one side to different shapes. If you see here, we have a triangle as an input and the output is a square. It actually adds one side for each shape. So if you notice here, for every function we have an input and then it gives us the output. Now, what's a function? Actually, let's imagine that we are creating a program that greets customers as they enter a grocery store. We want a big screen at the entrance of the store to say, "Welcome to Engrossing Grocers. Our special is mandarin oranges. Have fun shopping." Right, now we have learned to use print statements for this purpose. So, print and the first line, then so on. Now every time a customer enters, we call this 3 lines of code. If only 3 or 4 customers come in, that's a lot of lines of code required. In Python, we can make this process easier by assigning these lines of code to a function. We will name this function greetCustomer. In order to call a function, we use the syntax function name, then 2 parentheses. The parentheses are important. They make the code inside the function run. In this example, the function call looks like this. greetCustomer, then 2 parentheses. Now every time we call greetCustomer, we would see the output that we have already seen. Welcome to Engrossing Grocers, our special is mandarin oranges, have fun shopping. Now, having this functionality inside greetCustomer is better form, because we have isolated this behavior from the rest of our code. Once we determine that greetCustomer works the way we want, we can reuse it anywhere and be confident that it greets, without having to look at the implementation. We can get the same output with less repeated code. Repeated code is generally more error prone and harder to understand, so it's a good goal to reduce the amount of it. Now let's write our first function. So we have seen the value of simple functions for modularizing code. Now we need to understand how to write a function. Actually, to write a function, you must have a hidden and an indented block of code. The hidden starts with the keyword def and the name of the function, followed by parentheses and a colon. The hidden block of code performs some sort of operation. This syntax looks like this. We have def, then the function name, 2 parentheses, colon, then an indented block that will contain our code. So for our greetCustomer example, the function definition looks like this. Definition of greetCustomer, parentheses and then colon, and here are our print statements, but they're indented. And then we call the greetCustomer using the function name, then 2 parentheses. Now the keyword def tells Python that we are defining a function. This function is called greetCustomer. Everything that is indented after the colon is what is run when greetCustomer is called. So every time we call greetCustomer function, the 3 print statements run. Now let's get into some practice. Now here are some instructions that we should do. First of all, we're gonna write a function called loadingScreen that prints this page is loading to the console. And then outside of the function body, the part which is unindented, we're gonna call our function. So actually, here's my VS Code here. I'm gonna zoom a little bit so that you can see. So to define our loading screen function, we should write the def keyword followed by the function name. In this case, it is loading screen. Then two parentheses and a colon. Then we're gonna print loading. That's it. For the second instruction, to call this function, we should just write loading screen in two parentheses. So let's run this, and we have loading printed to the console. Now let's go back to our first code of the engrossing grocers. Now our code is working perfectly. We're printed the same as that we want, explaining that our special is mandarin oranges. But now, what if the special of the day vary from day to other? For example, if we have like peanut butter, for example, if it's the day special, for example, we should change it here, peanuts butter. But now we want our code to be more flexible. So for this, we use something called parameters. So what parameters? So a parameter is actually a variable inside of our function. For example, we write parameters names inside this two first parentheses here. So for example, let's make it days, or for example, let's say name it special item, and that will stand for the special item of the day. And this variable here this parameter is actually a variable that we can use inside of our function like other variables. So for example, let's do here an f string and space here, and then inside of this curly brackets we're gonna pass special item. Yes, so let's save this. Now when we call our function, we call it differently. Inside of this parentheses, we're gonna pass our special item parameter value. For example, we want it to be peanut butter, as we said. So let's save this, and so we have welcome to Engrossing Grocers. Our special is peanuts butter, have fun shopping. So what happening here actually is that when we pass this value to the parameter special item, it's like if we added here this line here, special item is equal to peanut butter, or whatever we passed. And then our function will consider this special item, will replace it with whatever value we passed it to it. In this case, it's peanut butter. We can do anything we want. For example, if we want to return it back to mandarin oranges, we just have to add it here, right? If oranges. So let's run this, and it should work perfectly. So we have here our special is mandarin oranges. Alright. Now, for example, what if we want to customize also the name of our store? So for this, yeah, you guys are right, we're gonna use multiple parameters. So we're gonna add also another parameter, and we're gonna name it, for example, store name. And then here we're gonna delete this Engrossing Grocers name, and we're gonna replace it with two curly braces. And before I forget, I'm gonna add here an f, because it's an f string. And here we're gonna pass our store name like this. Let's save this. But now, as you see here, the PyLinter highlighted this function name, and the error says no value for argument store name in function call. So we have to pass another value that will stand for the store name variable. I don't know, let's name it Mark Store. I don't know, I'm very bad at this names here. So let's run this. We have welcome to Mark Store. Our special is mandarin oranges, have fun shopping. And we can customize as much as we like between these two parameters now. One thing I forgot to tell you about is actually the order here is really important. For example, if we mix these two things, the order of these two items here, simple, let's do this the first and then the second one here. Let's see what we will get. Let's see what we'll get. Actually, the output is kind of funny. Welcome to Mandarin Oranges, our specials Mark's store of fun shopping. Actually, here the order matters because here Python reads the Mark's store as the special item and Mandarin Oranges as the store item. To avoid this kind of mistakes, we have something called keyword arguments. So with this, we're not gonna be mixed up another time passing values to parameters. So when calling our function inside of the parentheses, we have the opportunity to actually use the parameter name. For example, Mark's store is actually the store name, so we can use store name is equal to Mark's store. And also Mandarin Oranges. What is Mandarin Oranges? It actually stands for the special item. Yes. So for this, we're gonna use special items equal Mandarin Oranges. And here, using keyword arguments, actually the order doesn't matter. So let's run this to see. Right, so we have welcome to Mark's store. Our special is Mandarin Oranges. Have fun shopping. You see here, the order does not matter anymore. And another information is that we can actually mix the keyword argument and direct value setting. So, but now you should be careful a little bit because now the order matter actually another time. So for example, the special item should be the first one, then the store name will come. So like this, but we're gonna delete this parameter name here, and let's save this and let's run it. So let's run this, and it's printed the print statements correctly. And we can also set some default values for our parameters. So whenever we call the function without setting the parameters values, it will automatically set their value to a default value that we gave at first. So for example, our store name, if the user didn't pass the store name calling the function, when calling the function, we could actually set a default value to it. So for example, I don't know, let's call it, yeah, engrossing grocers. And now, it doesn't matter if we pass this store name or not. So let's run it twice. And in the second time, we're not gonna pass the store name. So let's run this. And here we are. For the first time, the first call, it's actually prints welcome to Mark's store and then Mandarin Oranges. And the second time, it said welcome to engrossing grocers and Mandarin Oranges. So as you see, even if we didn't pass the store name at second one, it's actually set it to the default one, which is engrossing grocers. Now the print function and also our function here, greet customer, actually it does something and it doesn't return any value. So actually, to introduce return keyword for you, you can guess about it as actually returning a value, like it is the value of the function. For example, if we set greeting equals create customer and then pass something to it, the special item and the store name. Actually, in our case here, great customer, this greeting will be set to a value of none because our function doesn't return anything. It just does something. It actually prints statements and it doesn't return anything. I know that's a little bit difficult to understand the first time, but you will understand what I mean. So for example here, instead of printing, let's actually clear a variable welcome and set to it an empty string. And instead of printing these statements, let's actually add them to our welcome. We're gonna use the plus equals operator So this is equivalent to, though, for example, welcome is equal to welcome plus, and then whatever we want here to be added to our string. And yeah, let's actually do it like this. Alright, and then we're gonna keep adding to our welcome here. And let's delete this as well. Need this. Right. And at the end of our function, we should return the value of welcome. This is the syntax for it. Return, and then whatever our function will return. And here, let's actually do this two things here. Let's actually name declare variable greeting and set with the value returned when calling the greet customer with this two parameters here. And then let's print greeting. Yeah. And I've just discovered that this greeting here will like output something ugly because we didn't set here some line return. So let's split this to different. Yeah, let's keep this here like this, and now let's print this. Right, so it's actually the same output as before, but now we use the return statements. So actually, as you see here, this function here actually returned the value of welcome, which contains this string here. Welcome to Mark's store. Our special is mandarin oranges. Have fun shopping. It contains all this string here. It returned it. What I mean by return is actually, if like this, if we set the value of greeting to this function call here, the value of greeting will be the returned value of this function. I hope you understood what I mean. And then we printed the value of greeting, which will be the string that greet customer returned. And actually, we can also do here some print statements. Actually, if we use return, we can actually do anything else. It doesn't mean that we cannot print statements. So if you guess it right, our file here will print the text two times. Yes. So the first time it is from inside our function, the print statement here, and then the second one is actually printing the greeting here. Now let's delete this return welcome here and see what we'll get. So let's run this and see what we'll get. It's actually returned the non-value because our function doesn't return anything here. So when your function doesn't return anything, it's actually return none and not nothing. Now let's clear this and we'll go through another example. So example, let's say divide by 4. As you know, we can define a variable using the def keyword, and then the variable name, let's name it divide by 4, and then two parentheses here containing our parameters. So actually the parameters will be x, and then a column, then some indented block that will contain our code. So actually we're gonna return the value of x divided by 4. So actually this is the name of our function. It's divide by 4. And now let's call our function inside the variable. Let's name it x1. Yeah. Let's name it divide by 4. Then 4. Yeah, you already guessed it. It will return a value of 1. And now let's print x1. So let's run this. Sorry for this. I don't know what the matter with this. Right. So it's actually printed 1.0 because, as you remember, the division operator returns a float number, not an integer. Alright. Now, what if you want to return multiple values? For example, the parameters we would pass two numbers, x and y, and it would return two variables. For example, x divided by 4 and also y divided by 4. To do this, we're gonna actually separate our return values by comma. This is too easy, I know, but to not forget, here we should pass two arguments, 4 and maybe 8. Actually, the highlight here says that it is not an integer, it's actually a tuple now, because we have two elements separated by a comma. Python recognizes it as a tuple. It's actually a tuple. So for this, to actually have this x1 as a variable, float variable, we should pass, we should declare two variables once, separated by commas, like this, y1. And now if we see y1 is actually float and x1 is actually float too. Now let's print them together here, y and 1. And then we have 1.0, 2.0. And now guys, we're gonna get into scopes. So let's go back to our last function here, getCustomer. Now I'm gonna simplify this code here. I'm just gonna keep special item, and I want it actually to just return this line here. Let's delete this and delete this also, and these two lines here. So delete this, and actually it doesn't have to pass two arguments here. It will cause an error. Let's add the return keyword here, like this. Alright, so actually this is a simple function that actually, it's not GUI, it's actually makes special item. Here, let's name it another time, make special item, yes. So all what this function does, it's actually gets an input as a special item, and it's actually puts it here in this text here, our special is, and then the special item. Now what if we want to access this special item variable here outside of our function? So for example, we want here to print this special item. So let's try to do this, special item. Alright, so let's run this and see what we get. We got an name error, name special item is not defined. The reason behind this is that actually special item is a variable, and as any variable, it has a scope. The scope is the place of in our file here that we can call a variable in it. So for example, special item here, its scope is inside this make special item function, so we cannot call it outside of the function. But on the other hand, we can actually define a variable here, name it for example special, for example let's name it starting sentence, and let's name it to our special is, like this, and inside of our function let's delete this and replace it by our variable here, starting sentence. So let's run this, and it's actually run properly because our starting sentence here, the scope of it is actually the whole file. We can call it whenever we want, but it should be after its definite declaration here. We cannot print it here. So let's try to print it. So let's try this. I'll go another time and name error. A name error because it should be after the declaration of our variable, like this. So now the scope of this variable here at the top is the whole file, but functions For example, variable parameters here. This variable here, for example, special item. For example, special item, its scope is just inside of this function here. And on the other hand, this global variables here, we name them global variables because they're declared as the global scope, can be used in this scopes here, like this, make special item.